I'm Bryant Austin with the beautiful whale exhibition here at the Museum of Monterey. This is the first time that the largest photographs in my body of work have exhibited together in North America. They've toured all over the world, including shows in Norway and Japan. When I shared this body of work in countries such as Norway and Japan, I'm an outsider from the United States, and it's obvious why I'm there, and I do not preach or try to convert or beat people over the head with any kind of messaging. What I really want to do is just present whales as close to reality as possible and give people the freedom to come to their own conclusions on this issue and on these creatures. And that approach was very effective. No one knew what would happen from sharing work like this in these ways. And what had happened is we had an overwhelming and positive response both from the public and from the news media. And really, my goal was to see how audiences would respond in these countries. So my interest in sharing this body of work in countries such as Japan and Norway, countries that commercially hunt whales, was to see if it had. I wanted to see what kind of response this body of work would have, and I felt that if we had a profound response both from the public and from the news media, that it might prove a viable approach to help address the far more serious global scale issues that these creatures face. And one of the things I've thought about for decades is how do you get more people to like whales and be concerned for their plight, and just be fascinated by these creatures? How do you do that? How do you expand this base? That answer came to me in 2004 when a whale came up behind me, touched me with her 15-foot long, 2-ton pectoral fin, and I had the camera to my side and I turned to look, and I was eye to eye with an adult female humpback whale who eye was beautifully illuminated from the evening sun. And in that moment I saw clearly what I could offer the world. These intimate moments with these calm, mindful expressions in their eyes, and it's all on their terms, so that you have a very relaxed, calm, mindful gaze. And I thought, this might reach a wider audience. This might give people pause. And that was the intent of those exhibitions in those countries. And so I'm done with that chapter. I will go back to Norway and Japan eventually, but I feel excited to share this work with the rest of the world, and especially in my hometown here in the US. And again, this is the first time that this body of work has been shown in the United States, and I have a lot of concern for the greater issues these creatures face. Whaling represents the commercial hunting of cetaceans, whales, dolphins, and porpoises, makes up less than 1% of what's killing them by our hands. And so when I carry out an exhibition in Norway or Japan, they know why I'm there, and I don't have to say anything. I just share these creatures, as close to reality as possible, and I kind of stay out of the way. But in sharing in my own home country, it's more difficult, and I really don't know what that next step looks like. There are issues like fisheries bycatch, where every year 300,000 porpoises, dolphins, and whales are conservatively estimated to die entangled in fishing gear, and it's all for the food we eat that comes from the ocean. And there are many more issues like that, and it's a difficult subject, and that's where my process is now taking me, is like how do I spark those unexplored thought and emotions? In addition to loving whales already, as many do in this country, how do I take us to that next step of awareness? I'm often asked, what does it feel like to float next to the eye of an inquisitive whale, sometimes 4 feet away, such as this whale? And whenever I'm asked that question, I always think of him. He's a whale that I've come to know as an individual. He's very well known for being inquisitive and tolerant of people in the water. His name is Scar. And the first day I met him is really the day that I think about whenever I'm asked this question, what does it feel like to be eye to eye with a whale in the water? And it was during a time where I was realizing just how close I needed to be to make a life-size photograph of a whale. I thought I could do it from 10 feet. And looking at all of the photographs, none of them could be made life-size. Not even with the 50 megapixel camera. You can have all the pixels in the world, and if you're too far away, they're all washed out. The detail's gone, the color's gone. And I was very reluctant to even continue this work. I thought, how can I be next to an adult whale that can be 50 feet long or longer and do this work safely? And I've so far learned how to do this work very safely. It's all on their terms, so I let them come to me. I'm flat at the surface, and when they approach, I remain motionless. And even though their eye may be 35, 40 feet away from their tail, As long as I don't move, they can line me up, and they move by with great precision. Humpback whales, their 15-foot long pectoral fin will pass just beneath my body as I'm making photographs of them. Their tail will move by with great precision as long as I don't move. And it's taken years to build that trust that I have with them now. And he was the first to really help me get over these fears. When I first met him, it was in the morning. This was in the afternoon. This was my second encounter. And he came over to me and he opened his lower jaw, which can be interpreted as a threat display. He doesn't know me, and there are people that spend time with him that he knows as individuals, but he doesn't know me. And so he opened his jaw and came right up to me. The front of his head, it looks almost like an anvil. It's about this tall, it's about this wide, and he's still a young whale. He was only 11 at the time. And he came right up to my head and stopped right here. And they're the loudest animal on the planet. Their sound can be lethal to us, could injure us. And that's what they use to catch their prey, squid. And I felt this tremendous sense of dread as I saw this head just bobbing right here like this. And as I tried to figure out what to do, I was thinking about slowly spinning and then moving away from him off to one side. Before I could do that, he just came forward and pushed up against me. And I remember touching his head and touching a whale for the first time and pushing off. And as I gently pushed off, he heeled over 45 degrees to his left, and then he just kind of came forward to meet my eye. And I was literally just floating right here. And I took this picture, and I remember putting the camera down. He's looking at me, and he's, again, 45 degrees under my body. His lower jaw is about 5 feet long, and it's open. And I remember looking down, making sure my fins wouldn't touch his lower jaw. He has a history of grabbing fins, and I just did not want to have contact with him. It's in a lot of ways, it's not necessarily threatening, but it's like an opposable thumb for them. They have little pec fins, and they can't really do much with them, so they're very tactile with their lower jaw. And I remember looking back up at his eye and thinking, are you testing me? You know, and it was a very special moment. You know, so far in my history of doing this work, I've had just a handful of moments like that with very inquisitive whales, and I needed to share this with the rest of the world. So I brought the camera to my eye and turned over my complete trust to him. I stopped worrying about my fins, stopped worrying about everything, and I just started making these photographs of his eye and his surrounding head. He was too active to give me a sitting of his profile where I would compose photographs along his body in 5-foot wide sections with a telephoto lens, and then I blend them all together. But he gave me about 5 pictures around his head, and I composed another image of him, of this profile that's here on exhibit called Sperm Whale Composite Portrait 1. And that was in 2009. That was all I could create of this whale. I reunited with him 2 years later. And I don't think he remembered me, but he did the same greeting. He came up to me, presented his head, jaw was open. I remember seeing this eye, this is his right eye, and it was all cloudy, and it may have been damaged either from humans, possibly because he's too friendly. Could have been a squid beak that got him. These are all squid beak scars that you see here, so that may have been the result. And he was very uncomfortable, so he was kind of just moving around. His jaw was open, and so I swam around the front of his head and came over to his other eye, and then he just settled, and he gave me a nice 4-minute sitting. He just floated there, motionless at the surface. And I started from the front of his head. The camera I use is, again, it's like an 80mm lens. It's a 50 megapixel camera made by Hasselblad, and it goes on its side like this, so the maximum area coverage is this way. And I just started floating and swimming along his body and photographing him in 5-foot wide sections all the way to his tail. I composed 144 photographs in 4 minutes, and was able to create my largest photograph so far. Unfortunately, it's not here on exhibit. It measures 10 by 36 feet. It hasn't been printed yet. It actually needs a permanent home before it's printed and mounted because it is so big. It weighs 1,200 pounds. And it's all done to fine art archival standards, much in the way that my first life-size full-body composite of a minke whale has been done here at the museum. In 2004, I was hit with a profound inspiration. You know, for years, I've worked with NGOs. I was a painter most of my life, and I was never satisfied either with my creative work or working with whale conservation organizations, or I've also worked with sea otter research organizations and volunteered in a paid capacity, and always trying to find some meaning and fulfillment and to feel like I'm making a difference. And I never was able to achieve that, and I was at a crossroads, and I was ready to just give up photographing whales because I felt there are plenty of talented whale photographers in the world, and the whales really don't need one more out there replicating the same results. And I just felt I don't know the answers. And it was really at a crossroads in 2004 when I was making the decision to give up and find another path perhaps. And the day after the night I decided to give up, I was with a mother and calf, and I was floating at the surface and they swam right up to me. The calf was actually on a collision course and he moved away at the last moment. He just literally veered right in front of me like that. And the camera I had a fisheye lens. That means you can see everything in front of you from 180 degrees, and it's one of the traditional lenses used in whale photography for the last 40 years. And I was worried this calf would hit me with his tail. He was so close, and I thought I better lower my camera and see what's going on. And I lowered it, and I remember seeing this belly button go by, and he's about this wide, and I was immediately struck by the color. I could see his true colors and the subtle details. I could see parasites, and I could see his skin and musculature move and flex over his frame as he was powering down one more time to go by me, and his tail went 8 inches right by my mask. And that gave me pause. I thought, I've never experienced that before, and I bet very few people have. And I'm going through the whole process of what does that mean? What can I do with that? And I'm mostly just stunned. And while I'm sitting there floating, trying to think about what all that means, I get a solid tap on my shoulder, and it was too solid of a tap to be human. And with the camera to my side, I turned to look and saw with my own eyes the mother. They had swam around me, so I ended up in between them, which is not recommended. Not a good situation, but she was very gentle with me. She could easily have broken my back, and I found myself trembling from her restraint. My whole field of view was filled with this whale's body and this calm, mindful eye looking up at me. And the sun, it was 4 o'clock in the afternoon, so the sun's coming over, lighting up her eye. And I was really appreciating seeing a whale's eye without a camera, less than 8 feet away, looking up at me. And in that instant, I saw clearly what had been missing. And at the time, it was 30 years of whale photography. It was moments such as those, documented on their scale and on their terms. And when it's on their terms, it's reflected through the expression in the eye, which is very important. If you want to reach a wider audience, you want to inspire a wider audience. And so I had to make my peace with that inspiration. I tried to keep a day job. I tried to do this part-time, and I knew that to be present for such a moment like that again, when a whale comes up that close, that I would need to invest entire seasons, up to 3 months with these creatures. And even then, there's no guarantee, but you have to be there while they're there. You have to show up. And so after about 14 months after that encounter, I decided to quit my job, sell everything I own, and raise enough money for 124 days of field work across 2 seasons. Out of those 124 days, I had many opportunities to learn, and I had to learn how to make life-size photos of whales. What is involved? There's technical things to overcome, behavioral things to learn about, and my behavior, their behavior. And I learned a lot in those 124 days, but I had no photographs. And with about 2 weeks left to go, I was looking at not having anything to show for my efforts, and really coming home with nothing and starting completely over with my life. And I had a very, very sleepless night towards those final weeks, and I didn't sleep at all, and was really struggling with anxiety and really feeling a lot of regret. And the next day we went out in the water, and within 20 minutes I was already floating above another mother and calf, and really just feeling exhausted. And I spent about 40 minutes with them. The mom was resting at 60 feet. And the calf would come up to me a little bit, come back down to mom, 60 feet down, rub his back on mom, wave his fins in the fashion of a conductor, so we named him Beethoven. And she came up to look at me. She was 12 feet away, too far away to make a life-size photo. I knew it by then. And I took a picture of her anyway, and I lost track of the calf. And as I realized, where's Beethoven, her eye went like this as she's looking up at me, and I thought, uh-oh. And my body lurched forward at the surface of the water, and I strained to look up. And I saw the underside of a whale's body come right over the top of me like this. And before I could realize what was going on, I lowered my camera and I looked down, and I saw this pectoral fin come around and wrap across my chest and hold me against his belly. It was Beethoven. And I didn't make any life-size photographs of him that day, but it gave me pause. And these were 2 events where I wanted to give up, and then these mother calf pairs come up to me and do something beyond my imagination. So I just kind of relaxed and hung in there for another day. And the following day, I met this calf and his mother. And it was the same time, it was around 10 in the morning, and they swam around me for 20 minutes, and each time coming closer and closer. And finally, this one, Mozart, was riding on his mom's back. So he had his pectoral fin. This is mom's dorsal fin, so they're like this. He's hitching a free ride, he's cruising around. She swims 12 feet underneath me, and Mozart lifts his fin, peels off, and comes up to look at me. He's 2 feet away. I was using the wrong lens. I use telephoto lenses now, 80 millimeter, 100 millimeter, 6 feet away. I was thinking I could do this with wide angle lenses from 10 feet away, which is crazy. And I think deep down that's because I was afraid to be closer. And I had to overcome that fear. So, and it was weird because he was helping me work with my limitations. He was just curious, but you know, in my mind it's like, wow, the timing is incredible. He came up literally 2 feet away and was like right here looking at me. I took this portrait you see here, and I knew in my mind, this has got to come back. I can reproduce this to life-size dimensions. And I thought, oh, this is incredible. And I started photographing along his body, but I had poor body position. I was still learning. You have to stay flat when you're that close with a whale. And if you drop your leg or you're vertical, highly dangerous. You're in the striking path of their pectoral fin and their fluke. So I am now flat, but at the time my leg had dropped. And Mozart, his pectoral fin's the bottom corner there. It's gonna come out if I were able to take more pictures, but he spun me around. His pectoral fin hit my leg gently, and he spun me around, and my back was to him. So I'm holding the camera like this with my back to him. I don't swim away because if I flee or make any erratic moves, he might panic and just bolt and then really hurt me. So I just floated there like this, almost in a fetal position, and his tail came right up to my back, and one of my assistants in the water saw it. It went right up to my back and then went like this at the last minute and powered down. And that was it. Out of those 124 days, this was the only photograph that I was able to make to life-size dimensions. And I came home, it was 2006. I knew that if I wanted to continue, I had to print this photograph, so I sold all my underwater camera equipment and fully committed to this and printed a body of work to begin showing and begin getting the word out there. And this was really my only currency. And for 2 years, I exhibited this photograph and several other black and whites, and it led to the commission of my full body work that's here on exhibit at the Museum of Monterey. And these are pieces that are up to 6 by 30 feet. So I created my first life-size portrait and was never able to make a full body life-size composite during those 124 days in the field in the South Pacific with the humpback whales. I had a couple of opportunities to try, and I made a lot of mistakes. It was a terrific opportunity to learn, really. At the time, I didn't even know, I wasn't very proficient on Photoshop. I knew how to do basic stuff to prepare photographs to be printed, I knew that. But compositing, blending multiple photographs, stitching them together by hand, I didn't know how to do that. And at the time, I just thought, if I could just get these photographs in their raw format, you know, just get them, then I'll figure out how to stitch and everything, all that later. I'll get someone to teach me. And it was completely unproven. And those several attempts I had made in the Kingdom of Tonga had failed. And in 2008, I was commissioned to create a large body of work to take to Norway and Japan and to begin exhibiting and exploring this process of sharing without a strong activism approach, more of just a gentle approach, really. And so I started this project to make another effort to create a full body composite. I went to the Eastern Caribbean off the island of Dominica, and I worked with several individual sperm whales for a period of 5 weeks. And Dominica is a place where you'll find over 20 individual sperm whale families that pass through there. And there was one family that had a male in the family who's known to be very inquisitive, and that's the whale I've shared earlier named Scar. And during those 5 weeks, I never found him. And it was, again, another time where I was looking at coming back with nothing. And, and it was my last full day on the water. And I was with this massive female. She was probably 40 feet long, and she swam right by me, not close enough for the kind of photography I want to do, and she dove. And I stuck my head out of the water to find my boat, and my friend was also there in his boat doing, carrying out his whale research, Shane Garrow. He's finishing his PhD on the social biology of Eastern Caribbean sperm whales at the time. And I said hi, and he looked at me and said, that was Scar's mother, and this is the family you've been looking for. This is the group of 7. And I felt a tremendous sense of relief. I thought, okay, today might be a day where I can create something. Before I was able to get back in the boat, this whale, this is Enigma, this is Scar's cousin. He swam over and just swam around me, swam under me, looked around. He wasn't too sure about me, so I just remained motionless. I didn't have the camera to my face. I just stayed there like this, floating flat, watching him, making eye contact. And he finally settled 5 feet in front of me. And for about a half hour, he would just float right there next to me. And it allowed me to make composite photographs. So from 5 feet away, I turned the camera on its side and I started photographing and just painstakingly trying to keep each picture in focus. The Hasselblad camera has one autofocus point, which is very difficult with nature, with wildlife. And so I spent 30 minutes doing that. And I remember hearing his mom 1,000 feet below. I could hear her clicks. They sound like castanets, and she's searching for squid. His aunt was at the surface, but she was nursing her son, and so he really didn't have anything to do, so he just decided to hang out with me, which I feel is just a tremendous gift, and really to be able to share the work in that way, and share those moments in this way. I swam back to the boat. He followed me. I stopped, took a few more pictures, and then ended the encounter. I wanted to be back on the boat before his mom surfaced again, so I just wanted to stay out of their way. Yeah, that's Enigma. He's 5 by 20 feet. This photograph weighs about 400 pounds. When I see it, I just have lots of gratitude. These photographs are massive, and in the beginning, I was on a shoestring budget. I poured everything I had into it. I was doing it full time, essentially working for free. I mean, I just put everything I had into it. And so, when I would make like a life-size portrait at the time, I could only afford to make the photograph. I couldn't afford a crate, so I would very carefully try to transport these photos from exhibit to exhibit. They would inevitably be damaged and have to be destroyed, and it's always heartbreaking. And I've since learned that if I can't afford to have a crate made with the photograph, I can't afford to have the photograph made, so I don't do that anymore. And it's a daunting task, because I have this photograph and my minke whale photograph and my 2 largest life-size portraits travel together each in their own individual crate on a massive skid. The whole thing weighs close to probably 3,000 pounds, and it's traveled all over the world. The days of me hand carrying life-size photographs are done. I need teams of people to move them around, unpack them, install them. I guess it's a metaphor in a lot of ways for the way I work now. I am a very solo-minded person in the way I create. It's often hard for me to articulate these ideas, and they often get taken over by other people's thoughts and ideas. And so I find it's easier for me just to work alone. And I also work alone with whales too, because the fewer people there are in the water, the more likely they're going to come close to you. So that's the main reason. But asking for help, that's something I've learned to do over the last years in creating these photographs, because you can't do it by yourself. Everything from carrying and packing a crate to seeking a commission or asking for support to sponsor an exhibition, it's done collectively. No one person can do this. There's no one that has a financial capacity or the creative capacity to do the whole package. So I've begun to really appreciate this as a collective effort. This is a minke whale Composite 1. It's my second largest full body life-size composite of a whale. It measures 6 by 30 feet. This is of a female dwarf minke whale from the Great Barrier Reef, Australia. Let's see, again, it was composed in 2009, and this was a time where I was commissioned to create a body of work, a series of full-body composites, life-size portraits, to carry out exhibitions in Norway and Japan, and to begin this process of learning and seeing if this whole approach would be an effective way in inspiring unexplored thought and emotion from audiences we felt might be challenging. And so Ella she's named Ella by the biologists that study her in the Great Barrier Reef. She was first identified in 2006, and I had the pleasure of spending 5 days with her. In particular, there was anchorage. We dropped anchor. My boat stayed there for 5 days, and almost every morning I would wake up and look out the window, get a cup of coffee, and out the porthole you would see a dorsal fin go by, and it would be Ella often. And I would get in the water, and I would end up spending 6 hours with her on one day in particular, and I'm floating in the water 8 hours a day. It's probably the most demanding work I've ever done with whales. But in a lot of ways, she made it easy. She came closer to me than any other whale that season, as close as 3 feet away. The photograph, this is a single seamless photograph now, but I composed 300 photographs of her body in 5-foot wide sections over a period of 5 days. And when I came back to the States, I picked the best 15, 20 images and brought them all together on a big digital canvas in Photoshop and spent, oh my goodness, probably 200 hours blending them together and slowly building up this full body composite. So this photograph has been to Norway twice. It was exhibited as part of a public space exhibition, which was really exciting. She was reproduced to a dimension of 25 feet in height by 100 feet in width for a public space show, and we reached 250,000 people a day with that show. And she finally went to Japan. This is the actual printed photograph that we took to Japan, and she's showing here now with all this other work for the first time since carrying out all these other shows. So it's really exciting to have her here.